There was speculation at the time that Senenmut was Hatshepsut's lover, and a series of graffiti in a tomb near the temple at Deir el-Bahri make it fairly clear that the person who wrote the graffiti thought that that was what they were up to. This is a problem that female rulers tend to get. They pick up salacious views of what they're doing. I suspect that's unlikely. It's too dangerous a game for Senenmut to be playing. I suspect the relationship was one of mutual respect and not going beyond the boundaries of that respect.
But while the inner temple harbored private secrets, the outer walls of Deir el-Bahri became a place for propaganda and self-aggrandizement. Carved reliefs boast the crowning achievement of her reign, an unusual and bold military adventure. Every pharaoh was expected to prove himself on the battlefield, but Hatshepsut's army was under the control of her stepson, Thutmose. Thutmose was acutely aware that the throne was rightfully his.
Like Elizabeth I of England, she doesn't trust the army. She's got a problem. If she sends the army out to extend the empire, if it loses, she will be blamed and will almost certainly lose power. What happens, on the other hand, if it wins? The generals in charge of the victorious army are likely to turn round and say, see, we can achieve victory, we don't need this queen upstart on the throne. So Thutmose and his army represents a major problem for Hatshepsut.
The pharaoh devised an ingenious plan that would not only keep Thutmose and his army occupied, but would also enhance her status. She commanded her soldiers to prepare for an epic trading mission to a place where no Egyptian had been for over 500 years, the land of Punt. As well as keeping her stepson busy, Punt offered Hatshepsut the promise of exotic goods. Above all, incense.
Incense was a very important part of Egypt's foreign relations. The Egyptians valued incense tremendously. The elite liked to perfume their environments, but even more importantly, when you released incense in a temple, the god or the goddess actually embodied themselves in the incense. So what you were smelling wasn't just the incense, it was the aroma of the deity.
In the 9th year of her reign, the pharaoh launched the expedition to Punt, an epic quest for the rarest treasures of the ancient world.
Stage management was the essence of this trip. It was a huge piece of theatre, it was a huge piece of propaganda to show that Hatshepsut can deliver the exotic, the unusual, the divine. It also creates work for an unemployed army. It's a feat that they can talk about to their grandchildren, that they can say we did under the famous Queen Hatshepsut.
The walls of Hatshepsut's temple proclaimed the mission to have been a triumphant success. The reliefs depict the exotic treasures her soldiers brought back to her.
Look, they are returning, and they have brought something truly amazing. Trees heavy with fresh incense ready to plant, ebony and whitest ivory, baboons, monkeys and dogs, countless leopard skins, even slaves and children. Nothing like this has ever happened to another king of Egypt.
The scribes who accompanied the army carefully recorded the wonders of that exotic land. Houses on stilts, giraffes, and strange tropical trees. Along with the flora and fauna, the Queen of Punt was depicted as a huge, fat woman. These reliefs are regarded as the first anthropological study in history. The expedition to Punt did more than legitimize Hatshepsut's position as pharaoh. It set her apart as the pharaoh who had opened Egypt and reached out to foreign lands.
Under her reign, you really have the explosion of wealth, of power, of vision in a way. It's a great reign.
After 22 years on the throne, Hatshepsut died. She hoped that her obelisks towering over Karnak would forever remind the world of her greatness. But she had stolen the name of Pharaoh from her stepson, and for this, he would make her pay. Thutmosis III, rightful heir to the throne, was 25 years old and ready to claim his inheritance.
Amun opened the gates, and I flew up to heaven as a divine hawk. He gave me his strength and his might.
Thutmosis quickly reconnected himself with the line of warrior pharaohs, Akhmos and Kamos. It would be as if his stepmother had never reigned. Thutmosis would make sure of that. Thutmosis had her obelisks bricked up and ordered that Hatshepsut's name and image be carefully removed from every corner of Egypt.
Thutmosis III is saying we don't need the memory of this female ruler, this interlude in the history of Egypt as an imperial power.
Even Hatshepsut's beautiful temple was defaced.
It would be like it was in the days when it was being built and decorated, but in reverse. The scaffolding would be up, there would be hundreds of workmen scurrying around, busily chipping away at the wall to organize the defacing of the royal image of Hatshepsut was certainly a major bureaucratic task. And if there was anything the ancient Egyptians liked, it was a major bureaucratic task. So I'm sure this was some high official's acme of his career.
All evidence of Hatshepsut's reign was destroyed.
If you erase someone's image from their mortuary monument, you are in effect erasing them from continuing existence in the afterlife. And for any Egyptian, royal or otherwise, that's total disaster. And so by defacing a monument like that, you're saying, no, you don't have eternity.
With her name erased throughout Egypt and excluded from all the lists of kings, it was as if Hatshepsut had never existed. The death of a pharaoh was always a time for neighboring nations to test the resolve of a new successor. Now a coalition of Middle Eastern princes moved south and gathered in the city of Megiddo, threatening Egyptian trade and influence in the region. Perhaps his enemies thought Thutmosis would be weak. If so, they had made a terrible mistake. Thutmosis had waited over 20 years for this moment. He intended not just to push back these warlike rulers, but to take over their countries. Thutmosis was planning what no Egyptian pharaoh had ever dreamed of: to build an empire.
The strategy was hammer, 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 hammer. He realized that in order to build up a secure basis of power in the Eastern Mediterranean, that it was going to take a great military effort, that it was going to take many, many campaigns. And so that's what he did.
To increase the size of his army, Thutmosis launched a huge recruiting campaign. Soldiers were enlisted either voluntarily or by force.
They had to be armed, and we know there were these great armories filled with weapons and shields and things of this kind, and every soldier was given his gear, his kit.
Finally, the 4 great divisions of the powerful Egyptian army headed north, across the scorching Sinai Desert. They moved boldly up the Mediterranean coast.
An Egyptian army on the move would be an impressive affair. The leadership was quite interested in maintaining the movement of the army as something that had considerable visual impact. And it was partly to impress the enemy. They would be hearing, what is the Egyptian army like? Does it look intimidating? Is it straggling? Is it not well organized? But it was also very important for the army that it should have a sense of itself as a very well organized entity with very high spirit.
Led by the pharaoh Thutmose himself, 20,000 men marched toward Megiddo. At the end of every day, when the troops made camp, the pharaoh's scribes recorded the army's latest achievements. They were the first war correspondents in history.
He has scribes write down in a day book all the events that take place. When they start, where they start marching, where they set up camp, how many troops there are, how much they need to eat, all the actual day-to-day life of an army on the move.
4th month of winter, day 25. His Majesty passed the fortress of Sile on his first victorious campaign to crush the people who were assaulting Egypt's borders.
Back in Egypt, their accounts were recorded on the walls of the Karnak temple. The faces of foreigners bear the names of all the cities conquered by Thutmose. Here, the word Israel is recorded for the first time in history. The scribal records also include intimate details of what it was like to be a soldier in Pharaoh's army 3,000 years ago.
The trees I lie under at night have nothing to eat on them. Sandflies keep biting me and sucking my veins dry. I'm hobbling about like a cripple because I have to go everywhere on foot. Tell Amun to bring me back alive from this hellhole where I've been abandoned.
Thutmose and his soldiers had finally arrived at their ultimate goal. Beyond their camp, behind the mountain, lay Megiddo.
This is the town in the Levant where all the princes of the area have gathered. And if you